All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Ducks on Base podcast. We'll catch you up on the latest news surrounding Oregon baseball. We will also be talking about some of our guys um, and their outlook um, in the MLB Draft coming up in a few weeks, and the likelihood of whether or not some guys come back for another year or um, go go rep the Ducks in the professional ranks. Fox, you want to start us off with the first piece of news surrounding Oregon baseball?
So recently, it's come in a report put out that Blake Hawksworth, the Oregon pitching coach, is leaving for the same job at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State was in the Big 12. Their longtime pitching coach recently just retired. So we'll see their. Um, we'll wish him luck. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he definitely improved the pitching staff um, from the previous spot to the current day. Um, the only thing that really didn't change was the bullpen. The bullpen, you could say, definitely got worse over the time, but the pitching staff definitely did. We got great year, great 2 years out of Grinsell. Um, a good, okay, pretty decent year out of RJ Gordon, and we saw the big development of Jason Wrights this year. Um, we'll see who Oregon has going to replace that position. Um, I'm not. We're not really sure who it could be, but it's likely not a promotion from within. So we'll see if Oregon chooses to go out and get a really good coach or something like that.
Yeah, I definitely keep an eye out to see who Oregon brings in. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be someone. It's definitely not gonna be someone within the current program. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for you know news to come uh, in the weeks to come. I presume. Note that we have no inside information. So um, keep that in mind as well. Um, next piece of news, it broke yesterday, I believe, um, that Santiago Garcia, one of our mainstays in the bullpen, uh, has hit the transfer portal. Um, obviously, if he does leave, we wish him the best. But with now him and Cole Stokes, who entered the portal earlier in the month, if not has not found a new school yet. So it'll be interesting whether or not they're just testing the market, in the landscape of the NIL, um, whether or not they're just testing the market or they're actually looking for a new school. So obviously, we wish both of them the best of luck. And yeah, Fox, what are your thoughts?
Well, concerning like Santiago and Cole Stokes not finding a school, the current like a lot of players won't find like their true destinations until the draft happens because there's a lot of players that enter the portal. This happened last year because Oregon got a pitcher from I believe Oklahoma State. I don't remember
Yeah,
his name.
yeah, Jansen
He
Keisel. Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember that.
Jansen
Yeah,
Keisel, and he came in. He was supposed to be like one of the top players for the Oregon program potentially this year, but he chose to exercise his draft when he got drafted. So that's a large part of it is that um, a lot of these like decisions to join the team are largely due to being able to like just be able to have a spot guaranteed when coming into the next year if they don't get drafted as high as they want, or if they want to remain, or if they want to just like go and take their option that they have. So that's why we haven't reported on any of the the players that are coming in, because we don't know if any of them are going to stay or if something else happens with players coming in or choosing to come back.
Yeah. So it'll be a interesting few weeks for um, obviously our guys that are coming in, as well as Garcia and Stokes. I want to, like the easy assumption is that they're gonna follow, like some players like tend to follow their coaches, um, but I don't know. We'll keep an eye out, and you know we'll report something as soon as we hear it from official sources.
Well, in other news, we're going to go start with the Oregon draft eligible prospects, and this will be our draft episode that we'll do every year. Right before the draft that happens in the first few weeks of July. Oregon has a good around 5 to 6 members of the team that are currently. This doesn't include like Jacob Walsh, who will eventually get drafted late in the draft probably. But the members that are currently on the team that are draft eligible include Mason Neville, Grayson Gunsell, Jason Wrights, Anson Arrows, Drew Smith, and Chase Meggers. And there's others that will say, like Dominic Hellman, Carter Garotti, Jackson Jordan, Ian Umlaut, that are technically eligible, but likely will come back the next year. So we're going to start first with Mason Neville. Kenny, what do you have to say about him?
Yeah, Mason Neville, in the latest MLB draft, MLB pipeline draft, top 250 rankings. It's currently sitting at 35. I personally would put his odds of getting like draft versus returning. I'd probably put it as like an 85-15. Um, he is projected to draft pretty high. I've seen him um, go as high as like late first round, but primarily been sitting around the comp picks at the back end of the first round. So um, I think he'll leave. As we saw this year, he has the power. Um, and obviously, we don't know what he put up put up at um, the scouting combine, but I think it's a pretty good chance he's gonna get drafted high, um, and probably be one of our highest draft picks since David Peterson and Tyler Anderson. Um, Fox, what do you think?
Um, I think his main thing that he'll be drafted on is his home run power. Um, he had good walk rates for most of the year. Um, he demolishes fastballs. Um, his main thing that'll come in the future is if he can be able to hit any sort of off speed pitch. That will likely just determine his value in the show, is whether he can develop to be able to hit off speeds, if he can improve the walk rate, lower the strikeout rate, and play better defense. Um, he had struggles this year, probably because of injury that happens, where he didn't really get to show off a lot of the like defensive skills. But if he's able to play or like even to plus defense in center, right, left, he'll have a good chance of having a long career in the league. Um,
Yeah,
if not, he'll likely be relegated to like first base DH duty for his career.
yeah, yeah. Definitely him dropping his K rate down and increasing his walk rate. Definitely is one of the things that I feel has pushed up his draft stock. Um, Obviously, much better. You don't want to draft a guy high just for him to hit, like a Kyle Schwarber 40 home runs a year, but only batting a buck 90, and striking out like 25% of the time. So like, it's a good sign to see that Neville has improved and developed over the year to year. It'll be interesting to see like especially with all these guys, but I think it'll be interesting to see who drafts them and like their pedigree and developing prospects. I feel is a important thing to think about. There are some organizations that are better than developing prospects than others. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up in the draft this year.
We'll talk about it later in our in next week's episode, which is like a full deep dive into Mason Neville's stats this year, his development, potential landing spots when we get closer to the draft. Next, we're going to talk about Grayson Grinsell, who is currently the 190th ranked prospect in MLB draft rankings, right next to his buddy Jason Wright, who's at 191. Grinsell has been a long, like highly developed prospect at Oregon. He initially came here as a two-way player out from the South. He was basically like just a throw-in, but came in, like became a starter at the end of the year, like long relief starter at the end of his first year in the magical 2023 season. He just became like a star come into his second year. Probably was the best starter on that team. He was definitely better than RJ Gordon during that season, but he did it, and he even improved this year, which is really impressive.
Yeah, definitely starting off the year with a lot of preseason hype and accolades. Obviously, well deserved. Um, obviously, Oregon has recruited well in the state of Nevada with both Grayson Grinsell and Jacob Walsh being from the state of Nevada and our current draft prospects through the Oregon baseball program. I pitchers are I feel like a finicky thing in the draft every year, as it always is. Um, with injuries and um, like development and things of that nature, it varies year to year. It could very well might be a year where some team takes a chance uh, higher in the draft um, and offer him a little more money, obviously because he has eligibility to come back for Oregon next year. Um, could very well be the case to for Grinsell. He could also drop a little lower. Um, there hasn't been injury concern for him in his time at Oregon.
His only injury was in the super regional game
Yeah,
where he got pulled after coming back on like a 1 day rest. So
yeah. So I mean, besides that, there hasn't been much like injury concern. So it'd be interesting to see. Obviously, he's in the top 200, so it'll be interesting to see um, where teams kind of rate him as a prospect, but also like um, how like teams view pitching um, talent in the draft this year. Obviously, I think a lot of the first round will be um, heavy on pitchers. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up.
Yeah, for me, Grincel's largely going to be. I think of him like a really good comparison is like David Peterson because his he doesn't have the velocity to dominate players. He's like a 91, 92. He could probably get that up to like a sitting around like a 94
Yeah.
and if he gets into like a good development. Um and you can see that in his like fastball, and he's like really just he's really good at like changeup and pretty okay at the slider. If he can get his fastball up in whatever system gets him, he can make it to the majors, but it's likely just determinant if his other pitches other than his changeup like fully develop.
Yeah. A fastball changeup combination is can be lethal, especially with a changeup as good as Grincel's. It's just a matter of I feel like developing a third, a fourth pitch um, that he can consistently sit on. Obviously, you guys can see, um, his slider is graded as a 90, and his changeup is a 60. Obviously, they rate his changeup as his best pitch. Obviously, we've seen that this year. So it'll be interesting to see where that development lies as well.
So we'll move on to his uh, his fellow rotation mate Jason Wrights, ranked 191 out of it, and uh, his um, draft grade has a is largely determinant on what his potential is. Um, with a height of 6'11", as a righty, he has a very good fastball, which touched 99 was the high that we could see at Oregon. Uh, this year he was very good, and this is one of the players which it's really just determinant on what the team see in
Yeah,
him. Um, he does not have um, I would say the history. Yeah, he doesn't have the history of
yeah,
being a dominant starter like he was this year. This was his first year as a starter, and he was amazing when he had starts, um, especially in the second half. He had a fastball, slider, cutter, changeup, as you see here. Um, his only issue was just control, and if he can manage to, I don't know, depends on what the team sees. Maybe he needs more like a different arm slot, a different like shortening up the his release. There's a good video if you are interested, by Foolish Baseball about Lucas Giolito, where it details he's very similar, I would say, to Jason Wrights, where he has a tall body. He's tall in stature, and with long arms means that you could struggle with control.
yeah. I think as much, yeah, like I agree. His track record is not extensive. Um, Transferred in from St. Mary's. Uh, it looks like he had Tommy John surgery in high school. So obviously that's a little concern. But I think teams might be worried about his track record, but I also feel like a team is definitely going to look at him um, based on his potential. Like obviously we saw it this year when he once he got his Saturday starting role or Sunday starting role, depending on the week. Um, it was it was consistent, not consistent, but it was like he just kept putting up good start after good start after good start. Um, command can be an issue. Um, that generally happens with taller, lankier pitchers, just because the release point is a little much more tough to find when you're 6'11". Um, so I think for me, his I put his odds at like 70-30,
Yeah,
75-25, give or take. Um,
yeah. I would
he
say
also
that
has he has another year, right? Like he can't come back for another year.
yes, yeah,
So that's another thing to keep in mind as well.
yeah. Because I think yeah, he has a. It's mostly just going to be determinate on. I think it's more likely that Grinsell comes back than Wrights due to a lot of teams like projections
Yeah,
of this, and a team could definitely just say like, okay, this is enough for us to buy into it, buy into the hype for Jason Wrights. Um, but both could go and both could come back. It really just
yeah,
depends on
yeah.
what it could be.
Um, yeah, obviously, I think MLB. I think when MLB started posting about Oregon baseball and specifically Jason Wrights on their socials, it kind of I feel like gave a little insight on who Jason Wrights is, and like this guy can be on the radar, but it's just a matter of how the draft shakes out. I feel like for both guys, and you can disagree with me, both guys they will get over a slot to
Yeah,
to get drafted.
yeah. Um, we don't know how much like Oregon's NIL is for players, and that likely will determine whether one or two of them come back next year.
Yeah,
Um, the next player is not ranked. Is Anson Arrows. Um, he's been here for a few years. Started getting starts last year consistently. He's rated as a catcher, but has played outfield basically all this time due to the plethora of catchers that Oregon has. Um, he had a pretty productive year this year. He definitely improved on uh, all of the. Um, last year is mostly a defensive player. He didn't really get a lot of hits, um, but he did improve largely due to hitting a lot more home runs and hitting a lot more RBIs. He improved his home runs from 6 to 17, and his RBIs from 25 to 53, and that corresponds with an increase of his slugging by 120 points.
yeah. I mean, I think um, versatility is the name of the game in baseball nowadays. And Anson has played multiple positions, whether it's catcher, left field, center field. So he can do it all over the field. So I'm a little indifferent on his like draftability, like at least this year. Um, my reasoning is kind of not really related to baseball, but it's more of I don't think he wanted his year to go out like the way it did. Um, and I feel like that also will factor in um, into the grand scheme of things when he has to make his decision. And if he gets drafted, the time comes to make that decision. I feel like you know not really going out getting to play um, what can be what would have been his last potential game at Oregon in front of the home crowd. So his power improved, his everything improved across the board. Definitely made a few spectacular plays, um, robbing home runs, diving catches, things of that nature. Um, I'd put his draft odds at
I'd probably put it at
this,
60-40.
yeah, 60-40.
If
It's a good chance he'll come back, I think.
yeah, it's largely two things. It's if a team sees his value of his improved stats this year. One, that's the first thing, and two
Mhm.
is if they value his defense at catcher. We haven't personally seen the like what the scouts see in with the catching because they've been to more practices. They've seen him practice at catcher. His more of his play through like workouts or things. Um,
Yeah.
they'll see that and they'll see if they see his future as a catcher or as a outfielder. And
Yeah.
he definitely has the defense to play outfield. It's his outfield defense is more hit or miss, but maybe his catching defense is what will get him drafted and likely have to secure him over slot.
Yeah. He definitely could be a guy. I feel like a team could view him kind of similar to how the Dodgers viewed Dalton Rushing um, early in his development. He was a catcher and outfielder. They primarily had him. Correct me if I'm wrong. More catcher than outfield. Dalton Rushing.
Yeah, they had him at catcher. They played him sometimes in the outfield, but it looks like his Dalton Rushing personally is his futures at catcher following likely the end of Will Smith's tenure at
Yeah.
catcher, and
Yeah.
likely Will Smith will move to either first or third, depending on what happens with Freddie Freeman and Max Muncy.
Yeah. So I kind of see how a team can view a guy that plays, you know, behind the plate and in outfield. There's obviously, Kyle Schwarber is another example. He was a catcher initially, moved to outfield, not the greatest outfield defense, and then is now in a primarily DH role. So I'm not comparing like Anson Arrows to Kyle Schwarber, but like there are like similar archetypes of guys that like played catcher, then moved to the outfield, and then like played both. There are similar archetypes in the MLB, so it will be interesting to see if teams will draft him as like a catcher slash outfielder, and then pick like develop one or another, or kind of let him do both and increase his versatility. It will be interesting to see.
Um, we'll quickly move on to Drew Smith. Um, he was injured most of this year, came back in the second half, um, improved, looked at the end of the season looked a lot more like his um, 2023 form, where he was just raking every week and was one of the better players on this Oregon team. He is primarily an infielder. He was at third base primarily. He has struggled most of the time at third base. That led to the implementation of Carter Garate at third in the 2024 season. He moved to second. When he got injured, Ryan Cooney took his spot. Ryan Cooney proceeded to rake and was one of the best offensive players in the Big Ten. Um, and Drew Smith moved to right field to be able to get playing time.
Yeah. Um, it will be interesting to see. Like I feel like I didn't mention this under uh, Anson Arrows, but I feel like track record. Um, limited, as Jason writes. So it will be interesting to see, how they view that limited stint that he had this year. Given that he had an injury in the first half of the year, um, definitely has potential. We saw a lot of it at his time in his time at Oregon so far. So I think very similar to Ansoneros, quite honestly. Obviously minus the power this year. Um, in terms of being able to play multiple positions, things of that nature. Um, I'd I'd say I personally lean at him coming back next year. I'd probably say like 25-75 of him getting
I, I
drafted.
I would say 30-70 is likely. I think he will come back. I think there's a good chance he won't get drafted. Depends on what his agent and he feel. Depends on his NIL offer or whatever that. If he feels that it's more important to stay another year, get more experience at playing multiple positions, maybe move. Maybe there's improve at defense, play third base, play. There's a chance maybe you could play first base. Depends on what they need. Um, I think that's most likely what's going to happen. And um, if he does leave, he definitely uh, is likely going to get paid um,
Mhm.
for if a team believes they need him and he's ready.
Yeah, I think back. I can see. I agree. I can see him not getting drafted. But I also can see a world where he gets a back end 18th, 19th, 20th round pick. Um, he still might come back in that case. I feel like he knows he has a lot he can work on. And I think many Oregon fans see the potential that he has as well. So I'd put. I think we're both generally in the same range, like the 25, 75, 30, 70 range of him coming, like 65, 70% chance of him, 75% chance of him coming back to Oregon next year.
The last of the likely draftees is Chase Meggers. He was injured most of this year. He broke his hand, I believe, 4 weeks before the season, um, due to the information we gathered from interviews. Um, he was a dominant force in the 2024 season, and he did not show that this year, likely because he didn't have a full winter camp, um, as he got injured and was basically rushing to get back onto the field. Um, uh, with the fact that um, Cohen Nikolai has left,
Yeah.
he has gone to Arizona State at this moment. Good for him. Uh, I find it likely that Chase Meggers likely is coming back or has gotten information that he will not be drafted for what he wants. So it's likely he will return in some case of playing outfield, first base, or third base, or something like that.
Yeah. Um, I think if Cohen Nikolai, obviously, they have end of season interviews with Waz and the coaching staff. Uh, Obviously, they've gone through they're going through the end, process of getting scouted, or getting information about the draft. I think if Chase had there was a sense of Chase leaving, I think Cohen would have stayed, because obviously Anson's able to catch, but they've, at least this past year, to prefer them in outfield. Uh, and then with the only catcher on the team being Berkeley, maybe it does give Cody Nikolai a little more playing time or like opportunity for playing time. Um, Based on that tea leaf, I think it is very likely that Chase Makers will be coming back to hopefully have a full healthy off season, fall camp, and then be able to come close to, if not replicate the 2024 season production that he had. So I'd probably 10% odds he's getting drafted, give or take.
Yeah. At this point, it's really low, and I'll be
Yeah.
surprised if he leaves. If
Yeah.
he leaves to the draft, Oregon is going to be in a little bit of trouble. If we don't really know, we don't really. We'll talk more on the recruiting stuff for this incoming class following the draft, as maybe some of the prospects might leave. There is one catcher currently committed to Oregon, but he is a top prospect and might leave for the draft. Depends on what happens.
Yep.
But it would literally only be Berkeley Mabius as the only catcher on the roster.
Yep. And
And
obviously, yeah, wouldn't be good to go into the season looking with two catchers on the roster and one playing outfield. So I think it'll be interesting to see. I put it pretty low odds of him getting drafted, if at all. Pretty good odds he'll be back next year.
um, we'll talk quickly about the one Oregon prospect that's likely going to get drafted that is a senior. That is Jacob Walsh. Jacob Walsh will be drafted likely late rounds, as seniors have very low leverage, and the team is basically going to just pay them the least amount of money because they only have one shot and they can't really just wait a year.
Yeah.
So he'll be drafted likely after round 10, maybe earlier if a team sees like a lot of value in him and they might say like, hey, we need to draft this guy so we guarantee that he'll be on our team. But it's likely going to be later.
Yeah, I can see a world where I think he was unranked in the latest MLB Pipeline draft rankings. He was in the scouting combine. There's a few tidbits that came out about how he produced some insane exit velocity in Arizona. So there is that information to work with. Obviously, he's a senior, so his leverage is either going to the MLB or not. Um, so there's that as in play as well. But I can see a world where he's had 2 years of 2 3 years of him hitting 10, 15, 20 home runs a season. Um, so there is the track record of, he's been through the program for 4 years, um, being able to produce uh, in the middle of the order for Oregon. So I think I definitely like, obviously odds are he's getting drafted. I can see it's a wide range, especially when you get into like the mid to late round picks. Can be anywhere from like the sixth, seventh round. Um, this is not just saying for our guys, but like any player of any other school you keep an eye on. There is the potential of him going for anywhere from like sixth, seventh, eighth round for a team that like wants to ensure that they'll have him, um, or they'll drop him a little higher, save a little money in their pool to front end their draft class, or like a ninth, 10th round, or pay over slot for a guy, in the 12th round, like a high school kid or something of that nature. I could
Yeah,
also see a world where he goes like very late. So
yeah.
like it's a wide range of possibilities for Walsh, just because obviously he's a senior. put a lot of talent or a lot of production in the last few years. Looks like he had a great scouting combine. Um, so I think there's a wide range of possibilities for him. Where he gets drafted.
We'll go quickly into the other ones that are very unlikely to get drafted, but there's always the chance. Dominic Hellman. Um, this is his first year of consistent at bats. He looked pretty good. He will likely be the DH going into next year, and he'll have ample chances of getting drafted in similar way to Jacob Walsh. He also might play first base. We don't know. Carter Garati, he had a large improvement this year. He is doing better. He did better this year compared to last year. He hit one more home run, I think, this year compared to last year. He likely will be the third baseman again this year unless something changes. Jackson Jordan, he just hasn't had the numbers of appearances to really condone a draft slot. He might even graduate for all we know, but it seems like he'll come back since he has an extra year eligibility. And why not? If you are getting a good a college education.
Yep.
And then Ian Umla could theoretically be drafted, but unlikely. He was good this year. He'll likely continue to be contending for a weekend rotation slot or continue to be a long relief midweek starter for the Ducks going forward.
Yeah. So overall, I think there's a lot of guys to kind of keep an eye on as we get closer to the draft, and the draft is July 11th. So or somewhere around there. Don't remember the exact date, but like definitely a lot of guys to keep an eye out for and see. I think these decisions will impact, like, especially with the way college sports are now. A lot of decisions have a domino effect. So obviously, like, draft will have impact on whether or not high school guys will go to college or professional. Whether or not guys come back or whether that won't be. There's so many different dominoes that the MLB draft can knock over. So definitely keep an eye out as we approach the MLB draft.
I think we'll see. We'll continue to discuss more about the top prospects in our yearly rewind, in our yearly lookbacks. So next week, we'll, as I said before, we'll look at Mason Neville. We'll talk more about his year, his ups and downs, his important plays, important hits, so that you'll, if you're interested in more like in-depth understandings of what changed this year for Mason Neville, and with all the other players as we go through the entire roster. But I wouldn't. A lot of this information that we're saying is just what we think may happen, and a lot of things can change in the blink of an eye. I personally thought last year that RJ Gordon would come back, and Isaac Aon would also return, but he chose to go to the Dodgers organization, and then
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot that could go on between this episode and the MLB draft, and then like obviously you got guys like Bryce Betcher, who got drafted in the 13th round by the Astros last year, and still playing, using his last year of eligibility for football. There's so much that could happen this time of year, so definitely keep an eye out. We'll put a lot more content out on Instagram and Twitter. So give us a follow at Ducks on Base Pod. And make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. New episodes will be out every Tuesday, if not more frequently, if we have like breaking news. But like for the most part, expect episodes every Tuesday. I think for now, that concludes our episode about the MLB Draft. We will see y'all back here for the next episode next week.